So we have recently just hit 1,000 days of breastfeeding, and I thought I'd share like our journey to 1,000 days, because it hasn't been an easy journey. Breastfeeding is not always easy, and I wanted to share like what I've learned along the way, what we've been through along the way, and also just so that it can give you a bit of support if you need it, and also to let you know that if you do need to supplement with formula, if you do need to pump, if you do need to just go onto formula completely, then you haven't failed, because it is hard. We're also going to have some narration from this one here as well, so sorry about that, but that is just how it goes these days. So I have shared a lot of this before in like separate videos. I'll link everything down below, but if you have watched any of the other videos, then you'll know that we didn't have an easy labour, we didn't have an easy start to the breastfeeding journey, and I'll link all these videos down in the description so that you can find them, because I'm not going to go into like massive detail for them, because otherwise this video will be like 4 hours long. But I'd always wanted to breastfeed. I always knew I wanted to breastfeed. I did an NCT course, and it was just like, basically you put your baby onto your boob, they latch, and there we go. Make sure you get your skin to start with, and that'll be it. And you know, you shouldn't have any pain, you shouldn't have any problems latching. That didn't happen. Labour was really, really traumatic, and apart from really briefly holding baby Belle when she first came out, I didn't actually hold her again for hours. I didn't get the chance to try and feed her for hours because I was really ill. She wasn't well either, so we didn't get that initial like golden hour skin to skin bit. And then I couldn't get her to latch. Like she was very sleepy anyway, but she wouldn't latch, and I asked the midwives and like the support workers that were there if she had a tongue tie, because I'd done like a lot of research about it, and they said no, she hasn't got a tongue tie. And I was told that by like 2 or 3 different people. It's kind of difficult to remember now, it's a very hazy experience. But we were in hospital for 6 days after she was born. I spoke to a lot of different people, and they're like, no, she's not tongue tied. And then we got a lot of conflicting information from various different health support workers and midwives and everything when it came to trying to get her to latch. Some were like, you need to push her face into the boob. Some were like, you need to let her do it herself. Hold her this way, hold her that way, hold her. And I had no idea what was going on. So my first bit of advice there is to ask for the infant feeding support team. The midwives, bless them, a lot of them were trying their hardest, but they're not fully trained in it, and they're all so different. And I was just like, I've got no idea what was going on. So we actually started pumping. We were pumped for 10 weeks. Or nearly 10 weeks. She was 9.5 weeks old when she finally latched, and in that time I was pumping. We did have to top up with formula a couple of times. There were a couple of times where I was so exhausted, I was like, I can't pump right now. Like, we've got a little stash in the fridge, sort of like 2 or 3 feeds ahead, but she's gonna have to have formula for this one because I need a break, because it was massively full on. So she was obviously like waking up every sort of 3 hours overnight to have a feed, but it would be like, she'd have a feed at 10 and then go to sleep, and then she'd be up again at 1. So she'd be up at 1, I'd feed her for like 20 minutes, breast milk out of a bottle. I would then have to go and pump, and that was normally like 15-20 minutes on both boobs, and then wash the pump up. And then by the time I got back to sleep, it would then be like an hour before she was awake again. So it was exhausting. It was really hard. There's a Facebook group called Exclusively Pumping UK. I'm going to link all of this in the description because I can't entirely remember the right names of it. But they had a lot of really helpful information about pumping, basically, which is what I needed. They didn't have any advice on direct nursing because they're not a direct nursing group. For all things breastfeeding related, there's another Facebook group which I'll link below, and also there's Boobing It through Instagram as well. But there's a lot of information on there about pumping, because you buy like your standard pump, and the standard flange size that comes with it isn't necessarily going to fit you. So I learned that you would maybe need to change pump size. I also learned as well that how much you pump is not an indicator of how much milk your baby's getting. So a lot of misconceptions are that your baby's fussing at the boob, you try and pump a bit and you're not getting out, so obviously your baby's not getting as much. Babies are usually a lot better at getting milk out than a pump is. So if you're having that issue, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not producing enough, it just means that your pump isn't as effective. But yeah, this is all of this information is in those groups if you need to go into that a bit more, because that wasn't the issue that I was experiencing. I couldn't get her to latch. But after 9.5 weeks of that, and John actually bought me a medal because of how hard it was, and like how exhausting it was for me, and probably for him as well, because obviously he was having to support me through it, that she finally latched. And that was like 9.5 weeks of trying to get her to feed as much as possible, as much skin to skin as possible. I mean, we were just coming out of like lockdown. We were in and out of the later lockdowns while this was happening. So we did spend a lot of time here, just snuggled up in bed, trying to do skin to skin, trying to get her to latch and everything. And she finally did. And then there was a lot of pain. Now, I think you kind of expect some pain because your nipples probably aren't used to being sort of like used that much. I mean, they might be, I don't know what you're into, but for me, they definitely weren't used to it. So I was kind of expecting a little bit of pain, but the pain was excruciating. Oh dear. Okay, this one's got allergy. The pain was excruciating, and I remember like the first feed that I did in the middle of the night, noisy tiny baby, the first feed I did in the middle of the night, I was just thinking, I don't think I can do this. Like, this is toe curlingly painful. I don't know if I'm going to do this. And then because of her like latch problems and everything, I'd asked my health visitor to refer us to a tongue tie specialist because I was absolutely convinced that was what was wrong with her. And then when I did finally get her to latch and she was boobing and I had that pain and my nipples were coming out funny shapes, I was like, I'm even more convinced now. So I got them to push it through. And when she was 16 weeks old, we took her to a tongue tie specialist, and she was actually 75% tongue tied. So she was really tongue tied, which, you know, that's huge, from she's not tongue tied to yes, she's really tongue tied. So we had it cut then, and that's I found that quite a traumatic experience. They don't use any anaesthetic for them because apparently there's no feelings on that bit, which I don't know if I agree with. Like, she definitely didn't agree with that. It was quite traumatic. There was a lot of screaming, there was a lot of blood. She refused to latch afterwards, and I was like, oh great, here we go. But we finally got all back to normal. Latch improved, and it was also much better. There was hardly any pain. There wasn't any pain actually. But as one thing to say, like, you hear a lot of people say pain is normal, and I think a little bit of pain for maybe the first couple of feeds is normal, but not excruciating pain, not sore and cracked nipples. You're probably gonna maybe get a few like bit of cracks because of like the saliva and stuff. A little bit of breast milk on them should clear that up. So if it's excruciating or if it's long lasting, then that's not normal. Speak to a lactation consultant or the infant feeding team. So yeah, we'd got the tongue tie fixed, and we were like now on breastfeeding journey, and we decided that we weren't going to give her a bottle for a while because we didn't want her to forget how to boob and go back to bottle feeding again, because once we got the hang of it, and compared to pumping and sterilising and all that stuff, breastfeeding was so much easier. It was just easy. A couple of times we made formula in the night. That was an absolute ball ache. Washing up the bottles, pumping, all of that was just so time consuming. Obviously when you've got a newborn, you want to get as much sleep as possible, so once we could just then start getting a boob out and feeding her on that, was so much easier. So we didn't give her a bottle. That in hindsight was a little bit of a mistake, because when we tried to give her a bottle again when she was 6 months old, she would not take it, and she has never taken one since. So from when she was 9.5 weeks old up until recently, really, I've got to say, I was the only one that could give her a feed, which then becomes that's quite a lot of pressure on me. That was quite a lot of pressure on me. Obviously it's hard for John as well because he couldn't do any of the feeds. It was hard. It was really hard. I wish I'd discovered it earlier, and again, this is something I've talked about before, but we started co-sleeping round about, it wasn't intentional, we started co-sleeping round about when she was about 4 months old, and I was then getting like the best sleep that I'd had since before I was pregnant, because it was literally just safe co-sleeping, and she could just briefly wake up, I'd give her a boob, and then we'd both go back to sleep. And that is definitely something that I would recommend looking into if you are breastfeeding, if you're having to get up loads in the night. Just have a look into safe co-sleeping, because even if you're not intending to do it, chances are you will probably end up doing it, and if you know how to set everything up safely, it just makes it so much easier when you have to do it at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, we have only just night weaned baby Belle. She's not that far off of 3 now, and they don't recommend that you night wean until they're about 18 months old. Now, I just assumed that once she got to 18 months old, she would start weaning off at night time, and she didn't. And the only way that we have been able to get out of this habit of her wanting to boob back to sleep in the night is for John to go to her, or John to be in with her when she wakes up. And it's been like 3 or 4 weeks now, and she's still not sleeping through, and she's still waking up and asking for me. So it's been quite difficult, and I don't really know anyone else that sort of like got this far into the journey that's still feeding at night time. So it's been quite hard, and we just basically had to sort of like go cold turkey overnight. It's going okay, but I thought she would just be sleeping through now, and she's not, so that's been quite difficult. I also just like naively thought that she'd want to stop breastfeeding like as much, but I reckon if I let her, she would have a feed probably every couple of hours. I mean, now it's only in the morning and in the evening, unless she's ill, which she's ill at the moment, so she's constantly asking for a feed. It's definitely different when they can articulate what they want, and obviously she's been able to say booby for about a year and a half now. I'm kind of rambling with this because it's been a long journey, and I don't want to make this like a really long video, but I wanted to share like some of the tips I've got. Like the pump that I used was a Bella Baby one, because it was an emergency purchase. I used a Bella Baby pump, which I was lucky that fitted me, because I didn't even know about like flange changes and stuff like that. That fitted fine. When I was in the hospital, I used hospital grade Medala pump, which is like one of the best ones that you can get, and my Bella Baby one wasn't too different to that. I got about the same amount out. I used man bottles, the self-sterilised ones that you put in the microwave, but apparently you don't actually have to sterilise bottles and pumps for breast milk. It's only formula. I didn't know that, or they changed the recommendations. The NHS and whoever have changed the recommendations since I was doing that. So you don't have to sterilise pumps and bottles if you're only using them for breast milk. Obviously you've got the groups for the support, tongue tie. Your midwives are not necessarily qualified to identify those. What else have I learned? You need support from your other half, from your family and everything, because although they can't feed the baby, there's a lot else that they can be doing. They can be changing them, they can be doing the housework, they can be cooking dinner, they can be entertaining any other children that you've got. So just because your support can't feed the baby doesn't mean that you don't need that support, because you absolutely do. You then get the chance to have all those snuggles with your baby, your newborn, your baby, your toddler as it is, because Baby Bell loves a snuggle now still. And another thing as well is that I used to get really stressed with the amount of time that I was spending feeding and pumping and snuggling and everything. And then one day I was just like, actually this isn't going to last forever. And when I let go of that, and you know, the housework can wait, as long as it's like basically tidy, the housework can wait. She's not going to want those snuggles forever. When I sort of let go of that and accepted that that's how it was and it wasn't going to be forever, it made it so much easier, and I learned to actually enjoy the moments that I was spending with her. What are you up to? But we are now coming to the end of like my allocated filming time. She gets bored after about 15 minutes. We've been going for 17 minutes now, so I'm probably going to have to end there. I think there's probably things that I've forgotten, but if you have got any questions, drop them in the comments, send me a DM over on Instagram, because I am happy to answer any questions. As I said, there was probably more that I wanted to talk about, but she's getting bored now. So let me know if you are breastfeeding, or you are trying to breastfeed, you're struggling with it, or you're thinking about it. It can be difficult, it can be hard, but there is so much support out there. Please make use of it. Like seriously, it will help you get through that journey that little bit easier than if you just try and go it alone and just assume that because it's hard, it's got to be hard, it's always going to be hard. But anyway guys, as usual, really hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, don't forget to leave us a like, a comment and hit that subscribe button. It makes us really happy. Lets YouTube know the videos are shown to other people. We'll see you next time. Bye.